Welcome to our webinar Wednesday with Click to Science. This webinar is being recorded, so you'll be able to come back to it later or share it with colleagues if there's somebody who wanted to join us but wasn't able to. Today's webinar focuses on the 2018 National Youth Science Day experience, Code Your World. Code Your World engages young people in computer science through hands-on doing. It's a 4-part challenge developed by Google and West Virginia University Extension Service. The neat thing about Code Your World is it has computer-based activities using Google's Computer Science First platform, but it also has unplugged activities, things you can do to teach coding that don't require a computer at all, and bring this concept to life through games and activities that teach important computational thinking skills through interaction. So I think you'll find that to be really interesting and unique about the Code Your World Challenge, and something that makes it particularly well suited to after-school programs, which is one of the reasons we're featuring it on one of the Click to Science webinars. At Click to Science, we believe it's important to focus not just on what you're teaching young people, but how you're facilitating the learning experience. So throughout the webinar today, I'll be emphasizing strategies for active engagement, for learning computer science in a way that's active and gets all the learners involved and helps them understand computer science in physical, intellectual, social ways. Before we start the webinar today, I want to credit Jennifer Robertson Honecker from West Virginia University Extension. She's done a great job creating resources to support the Code Your World Challenge, and you're going to see her work credited throughout the webinar today. A lot of the content on the slides is from resources that she has developed, and I want to encourage you to look at the National Youth Science Day website, because you'll find a lot of resources there that can help you plan and implement your challenge. I invite you to continue using the chat box today as a way to connect with each other and to ask questions of me. We will be using that as our primary way to engage together. Let me start our PowerPoint here. Each year, Research University partners with National 4-H to develop a National Youth Science Day Challenge and Kit. And the resources for this activity are online. There's videos, usually low-cost supplies for high-quality STEM experiences. The Youth Science Day kits are flexible, and they can be used for like a one-day experience or a week-long experience, or if you want to extend the learning, you can keep exploring these topics throughout your after-school program. There are 10 years worth of challenges available free online at the National Youth Science Day website. So again, I encourage you to find that site and check those out, and find out how you can explore really cutting-edge topics in STEM, such as wearable technology, drones, rocketry, wind power, or biofuels. These are some of the topics that have been covered in the last 11 years of National Youth Science Day challenges. This year, the challenge is all about coding, and next year is going to be another coding challenge. So we're really emphasizing engaging young people in using technology and creating using the technology tools so that they can not just be consumers but be creators of technology. Across the country, there will be National Youth Science Day events held throughout the month of October. And the great thing about the Code Your World Challenge this year is that you don't really need to have any experience with computer science in order to lead these activities. They're very clear and easy to follow. The kids don't need to have any experience with coding either. The detailed instructions will take you through the activity step by step, and you'll find they're a great way to engage young people in STEM. So we're dedicating the next 2 years to computer science. Why is this so important for young people today? One of the things we want to recognize is that it empowers them to be creators. It brings skills that they can use in a lot of different industries and jobs that just open up. That computer science provides opportunities for young people that they may not have without that background. It also ignites innovation and develops problem-solving skills that are applicable no matter what career path they might take. Computer science today is driving growth and innovation in all sectors of the workforce, and they really open up opportunities to children and empower them for their future. We also know that parents are very interested in computer science and want to see more opportunities for their children. So bringing this into your after-school program is a great way to address that interest by parents and bring something new into what you're doing. Before we go too far into what we're doing here on the webinar, I want to share with you a video developed as part of the National Youth Science Day Challenge that really explains what is going on with this and gives you a great overview of the challenge. I'll pause for a moment and give you an opportunity to ask questions if you have any questions at this point. All right, then let's start the video.
Have you ever wondered how computers work?
Or how artificial intelligence can make decisions?
Or what makes the smart devices all around us so smart?
The answer to all of those questions is computer science.
Computer science is behind many of the things we encounter every day, even if we don't know it. And while the importance of technology continues to grow, so do the opportunities for people who understand how to create technology.
That's why 4-H National Youth Science Day 2018 is focused on computer science with an exciting 4-part challenge called Code Your World.
Code Your World was designed by 4-H, Google, and West Virginia University to be fun, hands-on, and easy for people with no prior computer science experience to enjoy.
In this video, you'll learn the basics of the Code Your World challenge.
So you'll be ready to have fun right out of the box.
Let's jump in.
Code Your World consists of 4 activities, but you can pick and choose the ones that you want to do, and the activities can be done in any order.
Today, we'll start with Animate a Name, a coding activity where kids can make a name come to life through animation, sound, and music. To make it extra easy for first-time coders and facilitators, Animate a Name is built on CS First, Google's free video-based introductory computer science curriculum, which uses Scratch, a simple and fun block-based coding language developed by MIT.
Animate a Name has instructional videos and resources that allow students to self-guide their way through the activity and how to code in Scratch. It's also the only activity that requires a computer, but it can be completed with or without an internet connection.
You can choose whether to run the activity online or offline. If you have access to computers with a good internet connection during the day of the activity, we recommend doing the online version, which allows for the most personalized experience for students.
The printed facilitator guide in your kit has all the instructions you need if you have an internet connection. If you don't have access to a reliable internet connection the day you run the activity, don't worry. Everything you need to facilitate Animate a Name offline, including a special offline guide, is included in the USB drive in the kit. Additional resources, like the videos for download, can also be found on the Animate a Name website, g.co/csfirst/NYSD. All you need to do is set up the computers you'll be using before you get started.
Next is Code Your Dance. In this 2-part activity, everyone can get moving and grooving by translating their favorite dance moves into step-by-step instructions that a computer can follow.
Part 1 teaches algorithm and program design by having kids write code for the chicken dance. As a facilitator, you'll be demonstrating algorithms that kids write, so make sure you have some fun with literal interpretations of their code.
In Part 2, kids use special code cards to design their own dance and teach it to the others.
There are a few different types of dance cards.
Yellow cards are action cards that tell you what dance moves to do. Make your own cards allow you to get creative.
Green cards are loops, which allow you to make groups of actions repeat. Repeating actions are fundamental to any great dance.
Blue cards are conditionals. These allow you to specify when certain things should happen, or when they shouldn't.
The next activity helps kids understand how artificial intelligence, or AI, can be used to make decisions with a simple game of rock, paper, scissors.
In Part 1, kids work in groups to play rock, paper, scissors with dice and learn about random number generation, an important component of many computer programs. Use the die decision chart to convert your dice rolls into rock, paper, scissor moves. In Part 2, the groups replace their dice with coins. Now everyone will use the AI coin flow chart to determine how their coin flips convert to rock, paper, scissor moves. Once kids get comfortable using coins, they can play AI versus AI.
Finally, add some color to this year's NYSD challenge with Color Your World. This two-part activity introduces kids to a well-known computer science puzzle called map coloring.
The only rule is to use the fewest number of colors to fill in a map, so that no country is the same color as any of its neighbors. The challenge seems simple, but you'll be surprised at how much you can learn about patterns and what they mean.
Parts 1A and 1B introduce the idea of pattern recognition and show how recognizing patterns can help you solve problems quickly.
In Part 2, kids put their creative skills to the test by creating their own world maps that satisfy the puzzle's rules.
Throughout each of these activities, kids will have fun while learning important computational thinking concepts, developing basic computer science skills, and building confidence that will help them find success in the classroom and in their careers.
Visit 4h.org/NYSD to learn more, download free resources, and order your kit today.
So that gives you a great overview of the activities that are in the challenge and what it can look like in your program. It's nice to kind of see. It's nice to see that in action to know what it's going to look like. All right, let's go back to our slideshow. As I mentioned earlier, I want to focus on this idea of active learning and passive learning and how that can make a difference in your program. So I want you to think for a moment about the differences between active and passive learning. Let's start with passive. Just get a picture in your mind of what passive learning looks like. Maybe a learning experience that you remember that you would describe as a passive learning experience. For me, I'm thinking of the library in my middle school. It was a place I really loved as a child. And one of the things that I did in middle school is I read every single book in our library about horses. I was just so fascinated by horses, and I didn't have any space or any capability to have a horse myself. So I read everything I could find, fiction, nonfiction, anything about horses. And it was a very self-directed and passive learning experience for me. And as you note there, passive doesn't mean that it didn't work bad. It doesn't mean it was a bad learning experience. It just was a passive learning experience, something that I did on my own without a lot of activity, without a lot of interaction with other people or even problem solving on my own. I just read every single book that I could find. And I learned a lot from doing that. Passive learning includes a lot of personal strategies. Reading for learning, taking notes on what you're reading or on lectures, finding and giving answers to questions, watching a webinar. These strategies tend to create pretty orderly classrooms and are part of a lot of traditional learning experiences. And I don't want you to assume that because they're passive, they're less effective than other learning strategies. Passive learning strategies are often used in college, and helping young people be proficient at passive learning helps prepare them to be adult learners. So passive learning strategies definitely have their place in the classroom and in the after-school program. But now let's think about what active learning looks like. What sort of image comes to mind when you think about active learning? If you want to, you can share an experience in the chat box if something really pops into mind that you think will help people really get their head around what active learning is. Active learning experiences can sometimes seem a bit out of control. A principal walking by an active learning classroom might not quite be able to tell exactly what's going on in there, and especially if it's happening after school, where you might have loud voices bouncing off the gym walls or the cafeteria walls. Active learning is hands-on, manipulative. It's about solving problems and developing understanding through experiences, really, through engaging in the learning process. It can be unpredictable where learners are going to go with their active learning. It can be a bit hard to decide how long it's going to take to reach the goals that you have in mind. But they can be a lot of fun for both the learners and for the facilitators. Some things that come to mind for me about active learning strategies are engineering challenges, which I love to do, or science experiments. It's also important to remember we don't want all of our learning experiences to be active or passive. We want to mix things up quite a bit. And I want you to think for a minute, what goes in the middle of this diagram? What do both these types of learning experiences have in common? Now I want you to think about a specific example of learning. Think about watching a video or watching a webinar. Is that an active or a passive strategy? Where would it fall in here? What about working on a computer, coding? What are some things that you can do to make to find that middle ground, to blend your active and passive learning strategies? That's what we're really going to be focusing on in the webinar today and in Code Your World, is how can we find that middle ground that takes advantage of both passive and active learning strategies and the strengths of both. With Code Your World, we're going to be thinking about how can we engage in active learning about computer science. I want to do just a quick overview of the 4 different challenges, and that was covered in the video that we watched earlier. There are 4 activities. The unplugged activities are Code Your Dance, Artificial Intelligence, and Color Your World. You don't need to have a computer for those. They're described here as low-tech activities. They provide opportunities to explore computer science concepts away from the computer. The plugged-in activity, the one that uses CS First and Scratch, is Animate a Name. And for that activity, you're going to want at least 1 computer for every group, 2 or 3 kids that you have, so that everyone can be engaged in the activity. If you can have each child have their own computer, that's going to be even more engaging and more likely to encourage them for active learning. Some exciting things about coding, whether it's on the computer or offline, is it can be a very active learning strategy. It involves a lot of problem solving. And for most young people, there's a lot of motivation in trying to get the computer to do what they want it to do. So they will actively engage in troubleshooting and problem solving when their program doesn't do what they want it to the first time. So that's an example of how you can make the coding activities active learning. And it may take more time if you let the children or the young people do the problem solving, the troubleshooting on their own, but they're going to get a lot more out of that experience. So one of the strategies, well, we'll come back to the strategies later, but that's just something to think about. So you have the option with the National Youth Science Day Challenge to download the activities free online or to order a kit. And your kit will come in a little box like this. Some of you may already have your box with all your National Youth Science Day Challenge resources in it. One of the nice things about the kit this year is there's a USB drive that has all of the resources that you're going to use up as you do the activity, so you can print more copies of them. And also additional resources like the Careers with Code magazine, so that you can build on this experience. So that's a great resource that we have. And then you also have all the supplies that you need for doing the activity. So each kit has supplies for up to 10 youth. If you have a large group, you might want to consider ordering more than one kit, or as I said, you can print out extra copies of most of the resources. It is designed for 4th through 8th graders. If you have younger students, you're going to want to think about how you can adapt it, or which of the activities are going to be most appropriate for those students. Today in the webinar, we're going to really focus on the Code Your Dance activity and how to make that an active learning experience. The Code Your Dance uses the chicken dance, which you might remember. You've maybe done it at a wedding, where it's a classic dance actually from the 1950s. It's been around for a long time, but if it's not one that's very familiar with the youth in your program, you can always substitute a different dance that's more familiar to them. In the first part of the activity, the youth are going to create an algorithm or a sequence of instructions for the dance, and then the second part, they're going to code it. Now, I don't want to assume that everyone who is in my audience today has had the same sort of cultural experiences that I have, so I'm going to take a moment before we go too far into this activity to show a video of what the chicken dance looks like. The video actually is a classic clip from the Lawrence Welk Show, which is part of my cultural experiences growing up as a child. As we watch this video, I want you to think about what are the steps that we want to include in our instructions or algorithm for the chicken dance. Are the steps repeated? How do you know when to move on from one action to the next? And how will you know how to end the dance? So think about these things as you're watching the video. How are you going to convert that into an algorithm? And what are the sequence that you need to think about? So again, what are the steps? Are they repeated? How do you know when to move on from one action to the next action? And how do you know when the dance is over? All right, let's look at this video.
Thanks for being with us for the show this week. Now here's Bobby and the kids to show you one of the most popular dances in America, the chicken dance.
Myron always includes the chicken dance when he plays fairs and the Worst Fest in New Braunfels, Texas. Here's how to do it. Everybody stand up at home and join us. You make the beaks, wings, tail feathers, and 4 claps. Do that again. Beaks, wings, tail feathers, and 4 claps. Next, you link elbows and turn in a circle, like this. Or lean back and turn. Or you can turn in place by yourself. Myron, here we go.
So hopefully you're getting the idea there of what that dance looks like. And again, in the chat box, I made some notes as I was going about what I saw them doing. Is there anything that I missed? Any tips or anything you want to think about as you're planning the algorithm for that dance? Any ideas about how you know when it's time to move on? How do they know when to move from one activity to the next? So the Code Your Dance activity comes with the programming cards, the coding cards, and you can make extra copies of these. I don't know where my copies went, but I did print out, because I was thinking that some of the cards, here they are, that they write on might get used up. So I just printed some extra copies so that I can have more cards available. And there's room to make mistakes and repeat them and start over. So we want to provide the youth with the resources so that they can make mistakes. So looking at the comments in the chat box, we've got some ideas. You need to listen to the music, follow the music. Is it 4 counts? Is it 5 counts? With a little bit more time with that video, you could certainly go over that enough with the kids to decide what it is. And then you could use an option like the loop, repeat the loop until the music changes, or repeat the loop for a certain number of times. So those are some ideas that are in the activity here that helps them understand the concepts behind coding using the Fun Chicken Dance. So they talked about how there's different colors of cards, and the different colors of cards have different meanings. Yellow cards are actions, Green cards are loops. They have to do with the sequence of the activity. Blue cards are the if, then, or the conditional statements. So if the music changes to this, do this, might be something that you would put on a blue card. The color coding of the cards is important because it helps them think about the different types of activity that they're programming there. And it also helps connect it to the coding that they're going to be doing in Scratch. Using cards like these as a manipulative makes programming a more active learning experience. It makes it easier for youth to make mistakes and revise their instructions until they have them right. And then they can use these as a tool to put it into the computer as well, to code it in Scratch. So again, thinking about active learning as we're facilitating this activity, I want to share an activity from one of the Click to Science PD resources called What About Challenges? And this experience helps staff think about the challenges they have in engaging in active learning in their program and in the activity that they're doing, and how to plan for active learning. So we're going to take the Code Your Dance activity that we've just been thinking about and think about how we can arrange the space, the materials, and the time to make this an active learning experience. So let's start by thinking about what we're going to use for this activity and what there is in the activity already that encourages an active learning experience. So there are some things about the activity that make it conducive to active learning. One of the things is it's pretty flexible in the space that you need. You want some open space if they're going to be dancing, but you can do this activity on tables, or you could do it on the floor if you need to. So you can be pretty flexible about the space, and no matter what type of space you have, as long as you have enough room, you could probably engage in some active learning. I'm also excited about the idea of using a video so that everyone has an opportunity to really connect with that dance experience and maybe dance it themselves before they go into it. I also like the cards. They're easy to use, manipulative, that's going to encourage some critical thinking and problem solving on the part of the children. And then there's time. I'm actually a little concerned about the time. There's a lot of ways I could use my time in this activity. So I'm going to actually think that that might be a barrier. It's a concern for me. I want them to have time to do the dance, to have fun with the activity, and to do problem solving on their own. So 45 minutes may not be enough time. That's what's recommended in the activity. But I'm thinking for when I do this activity, I'm going to have to really think about that. I'm not sure how to use that time. If I only have 45 minutes, I don't think I'm going to be able to make it as active of a learning experience as I want. I also have some concerns about those cards, and that's one of the reasons that I made the extra cards, because I'm not sure I have enough. I have more than one kit, but I want to make it easy for the kids to write on that. There's a question in the chat box about getting a copy of this chart. The blank activity will be available with the resources on the recorded webinar, and you can always come back and look at the recorded webinar again and capture this page if you need to. So now I kind of identified what my problems are, and it's time to think about solutions. How am I going to solve these problems? And I already gave away some of that. I made some extra cards so that the kids have plenty of paper, copies of the card to write on. They can feel comfortable writing on it, making mistakes, starting over. It makes it more active because it gives them opportunities to fail, to solve the problems on their own. So I think for how I want to facilitate the activity, making extra cards is really going to help make it a more active learning experience. and I am going to give more time. I'm going to spend more time on the Code Your Dance activity and put off the other activities for later, and not try to do them all real close together, but actually give more time for making mistakes, for solving problems on their own, and for engaging in that active learning experience. So it may take 60 or even 90 minutes for us to get through this activity, to dance it, to have some fun, to code it, and to try that out. I realize if I allow that much time, I'm going to have some groups that finish early. So I have to think about how to keep them engaged and what I'm going to have them do if they finish before everybody else has had enough time to solve the problems that they need to work through in their own activity. So a simple activity like this is something you can do with the staff that you work with, whether they're volunteers or professionals in your program, to help them think about what is it about this activity that I'm planning on doing that encourages active learning? What are the concerns, the barriers that I might need to address, and how am I going to solve those? One of the nice things about being able to do this in a group, if you're planning together, especially if you're not all planning the same activities, you can really help each other come up with those solutions. Barriers don't have to keep it from being an active learning experience, but you may need some help thinking about solutions that will help make it flexible and effective for the learners. I think it's very critical in after-school programs that staff have a plan for what they're going to do with the young people before they get in there, so they know what's going to happen. And they're also able to be flexible with their plan in order to adapt it to meet the needs of the individuals in their program. But it's hard to be flexible and meet everyone's needs if you don't start out with a plan. So this is a good tool that can help you build in your staff the capacity to think out and plan how they want to engage young people in an active learning experience. I'll pause for just a moment here to see if there are any comments or questions. Again, this chart that we're looking at here comes from one of the Click to Science PD resources called What About Challenges? And if you go to our website, clicktosciencepd.org, and search for What About Challenges, this whole training resource will come up that explains how you can use this chart with staff in your program to plan for active learning. All right, I'm going to keep moving on, but if you have questions, please share them in the chat box. Hopefully you're excited and ready to go with Code Your World. As I mentioned earlier, you don't have to have a kit in order to do the activity, but it's a lot easier when you've got all these resources. Oh, I wanted to share with you, we have the poster up here, but one of the great resources that comes with for Code Your Dance is this poster here. Let me zoom in on that. So you've got the cards here, and you can make extra copies of the cards using the USB drive. And then there's a great poster here to help explain how these work and how they can then take those cards and use them to create a program in Scratch as well. So all of these resources in the kit really help enhance the activity. But as I said, you don't have to have the kit in order to do the activity. You can download the challenge from the National Youth Science Day website and find your own supplies that you need for the activity. But here's what you're going to get when you order the kit. And this USB drive that comes in it is a great resource because it lets you print out extra copies of those things that you might use up. My kits arrived last week, and I'm really excited about getting ready to plan for our activity in October. All right. Again, I'm going to take a minute to just pause and review where we've been and give you a chance, if you have any questions, to share those in the chat box. We've introduced you to the Code Your World Challenge, and we've looked at a little bit more detail at the Code Your Dance activity, specifically thinking about how you can use the resources in that National Youth Science Day kit to make it an active learning experience that engages the youth you're working with in computational thinking and problem solving. Next, we're going to think about how you can extend the learning, how you can make that learning go on after you're finished with the Code Your World activities. And also about how you can use resources that National 4-H Council has created to promote the work you're doing in your program as well. All right. How do you make this really a big part of what you're doing? The first thing I want to encourage you to do is to really market that you're doing this challenge in your after-school program or in your 4-H program. There are some great resources that I'm prepared to market the National Youth Science Day Challenge, and you might as well take advantage of those and use it as a way to increase the visibility of your program in your community. We're also going to think about how you can extend the activity. When the activity goes well and you find that the youth in your program are excited about computer science, you might want to look for some more curriculum that you can use with them. And there's some great resources on the National 4-H website, shop4h.org. There's computer science and programming with Scratch, which is a step-by-step curriculum that can build on the Animate Your Name activity. And there's also a curriculum called WearTech, which brings together design, art, technology, and programming using wearable tech. So you can design things like stuffed animal that has sensors or lights, bow tie or hair ribbon that lights up, all kinds of wearable technology that gives you a chance to bring the use of programming into a sort of different field and uses a lot of art and design as well. The other thing you might want to do to extend your coding experience is to, if you do Code Your World in October, in December it is Computer Science Education Week and Hour of Code. Will both be getting a lot of attention and another chance to really promote that you're doing computer science in your after-school program. There are some great resources there at csedweek.org, that's the Computer Science Education Week, or code.org, which has resources for Hour of Code. Another way to engage young people in coding that doesn't require a lot of previous experience or expertise. Check out those resources to find more things that you can use in your program. And also consider starting an after-school or summer coding club. There's some great resources at Girls Who Code or CS First that both give you ideas about how to start a coding club and all the resources that you need. All of these websites and resources will be available as a direct link in the recording of the webinar too, so you'll be able to find these resources that we're talking about here if you want to go a little bit further with your coding experiences. I also want to encourage you to look at the marketing toolkit that is available from National 4-H. They put a lot of effort into this, and you might as well use it as a way to promote your program in your community and get more visibility for your program on social media. One of the resources you'll find on the National Youth Science Day website is a one-page overview of the challenge. This is something that you could share with potential funders in your community that might be interested in supporting your use of coding in your program. It also might be something you want to share with parents. One of the slides earlier said 90% of parents would like to see coding activities for their children, so this is something you can share with them to let them know that you are doing that in your after-school program. There's also some fun resources to incorporate in social media. There's photo booth frames that you can print out so that you can set up your own selfie station. There's lots of resources that you can share that let people know that you're doing coding in Code Your World in your after-school program using social media or email or however you best communicate with the stakeholders and the parents in your program. So I do encourage you to take advantage of those resources that are available. You might as well use it and use this as an opportunity to promote your program. There's also templates for creating flyers and advertisements if you want to promote it in a more traditional way. To let your community, your stakeholders know what you're offering in your program, or to bring more young people into your program who might be interested in the coding experience. So again, lots of resources that you can use to promote your program using the Code Your World theme. And then also next steps you can take to build on this. If you go through Code Your World and everybody loves it, you can keep doing this in your program. So what are your next steps? Are there questions that you have, resources that would be helpful for you to know more about Code Your World? As I said, the webinar is being recorded. You can come back and look at it, look at any of the slides, and all of the connections, all the resources we shared, you'll be able to download from the Click the Science website, and I will share with you where you can find that. Please let me know if you have questions, if you need any more information about this so that you are prepared to do it. I will get the link up in the chat box for where you can find this after it will be recorded. It's actually the same page that you may have gone to register for this webinar. That's where all of our recorded webinars are found, and you'll be able to see the recording of this webinar and find the supporting resources to go with it. I also encourage you to go to the National Youth Science Day website and see those resources that are available for you. And I'm going to share the link to the video that we watched earlier on YouTube because it's such a good overview of the Code Your World challenge. Thanks so much for joining us today. And if you have any questions, I will be available for a little bit longer to answer questions.